When I walked into the diner, he was already there, Jasper Price, my wife's new friend, sitting at the table like he owned the place. There were 2 glasses on the table. Candlelight flickered between us. And that look on his face? Like he expected me to turn right back around and walk out. He leaned in, real smug, and said, "Back off, old man. Name's Graham. I'm 61. These days, I don't shout, and I definitely don't throw fists, not anymore." But something shifted in me that night. I learned that staying quiet doesn't always mean backing down. So let me ask you, what would you have done if your wife brought you to dinner just so another man could tell you to give up on your own life? Ever been looked down on because you kept your dignity instead of raising hell? Drop your thoughts below. I'll tell you this, I didn't come for candlelight. I came to talk. But what I got felt more like a quiet execution. The Silver Pine Cafe hadn't changed much in the 2 decades since I first brought Clara there. The red vinyl booths still had those little rips in them, like they always had. The old menu board above the counter still promised bottomless coffee and homemade pie. Even the smell hadn't changed, a mix of cinnamon, coffee, and fryer grease that clung to you like an old song you swore you'd forgotten. Last Thanksgiving, I went all out, slow-roasted a turkey, made stuffing from scratch, mashed the potatoes just the way Clara liked, with garlic and cream. Set the table with the good dishes, too. She gave me a distracted little smile, said thanks, and spent most of the meal scrolling through her phone. This year? No turkey. No plans. Just a short text. Meet me at the diner. We need to talk. I figured maybe it was about counseling. Maybe she wanted to try again. Or maybe she just needed to say goodbye. What I didn't expect was Jasper. He was already planted in the booth when I walked in, arms stretched out like he was getting comfortable in someone else's seat. Black sweater so tight it looked painted on. Jasper was all about the gym and his own reflection. The kind of confidence that came with never being told no. Even Chet Baker playing softly from the jukebox had a hard time competing with that ego. And Clara, she wasn't sitting across from him like a neutral party. No, she was right next to him. Close. Her hand rested way too near his on the table. She looked up when I walked over and gave me this smile, like we were all catching up after church or something. I stood there for a second, not sure whether to turn and walk out or step forward. Laura, the waitress, spotted me from behind the counter. She gave me a small, kind smile and started pouring my cider without asking. Clara motioned to the seat across from them. "Graham, thanks for coming. You remember Jasper, don't you?" Oh, I remembered him. Everyone in Wolfboro knew who he was. Jasper Price, the big shot quarterback from 33 years ago who never really left high school. Now he ran a gym on the edge of town and talked about protein shakes like they were sacred. I slid into the seat, slow and steady. My jaw clenched, but I kept my face calm. The only sign I was even slightly rattled was my fingers, gently pressing against the table's edge. Jasper leaned in, voice smooth but colder than it should have been. "Let's not drag this out, man. We're grown. You deserve the truth." I didn't say anything, just looked at Clara. She didn't flinch. "We've been seeing each other for a while," Jasper said. "Didn't plan for it, but here we are. It's out now." Still, I kept quiet. Behind him, the diner's holiday decorations glowed in the window, green reeds with gold ribbon, twinkling in the light. He went on. "You've got every right to be upset," he said. "But here's the thing. You can walk away with your pride intact, or you can make this ugly." Clara picked up her cider. Her hand didn't even tremble. Jasper's voice turned a little sharper. "Nobody wants a scene, man." I finally looked him straight in the eyes. "Not down. Not away. You're mistaking my quiet for surrender," I said. "Hank, steady." The silence after that felt heavier than any shouting match. Even Jasper shifted in his seat a bit. That's when Laura appeared again, setting down a slice of apple pie in front of me with a soft nod. I hadn't asked for it. She knew I wouldn't eat it. But some traditions you hold on to, if only out of respect. I stood up, pulled a 20 from my coat, laid it on the table, and placed a neatly folded napkin on top. Inside was a quick thank you note for Laura. I didn't glance back at Clara. Didn't touch the pie. As I stepped outside, the cold January air hit me like a slap. A light dusting of snow covered the sidewalk. My breath floated in front of me. For a while, I just stood there under the diner's soft yellow lights. My reflection in the glass was faint, almost ghost-like, layered over Clara and Jasper still sitting there, still warm inside, completely unaware that something in me had changed for good. This wasn't anger. Anger flares up and burns out. No, this was something colder, sharper, a kind of stillness, like the quiet drift of a frozen river, slow, strong, and impossible to stop. I didn't look back. Out there, under the snow-speckled glow of the diner, I whispered to myself, "This isn't over." But here's the thing. It won't play out the way you'd expect. Some homes don't explode in drama. Some just fade, real quiet, pretending they're still alive long enough to keep you fooled. When I stepped through the front door, there was no yelling, no chaos, just this strange hush, like the house itself was holding its breath. The lights were low, but on. The heater hummed softly in the corner, same as it always did when the cold set in. And I could still catch a whiff of something roasted, carrots maybe, and something that might have been chicken. It should have felt like coming home. But instead, it felt like I'd walked onto a movie set somebody else had arranged. I stood there for a moment, coat still on, scanning the room like a stranger trying to figure out if they belonged. 2 wine glasses sat on the kitchen counter. One of them had a lipstick mark. Neither one was mine. The plate in the sink had been rinsed, but not washed. A neatly folded cloth napkin sat beside it, ironed crisp. Clara hadn't bothered to iron a napkin in years. The fireplace flickered low in the gas heater, casting these long, uneasy shadows on the wall. I moved through the house slow, without flipping on any new lights. Not because I was scared, but because I didn't want to break the illusion. I wanted to see the lie for what it was. Upstairs, the bed was made too perfect, hospital corner tight, pillows stacked just right. That wasn't habit. That was effort. Expectation. I leaned down and breathed in. Her perfume still clung faintly to the pillowcase. But underneath it, something sharper lingered. A man's cologne. Not mine. Never was, never will be. I sat down on the edge of the bed, still bundled in my coat, cold from outside creeping into my arms. My hands rested on my thighs. I didn't feel frantic. My mind didn't race. Instead, I just took it all in. Observed. Noted. Accepted. Then I stood up and walked over to her vanity. It was spotless. Too spotless. No loose bobby pins, no jars left half open, no brushes out of place. I opened that little drawer she never used. Inside was just one thing, a folded receipt. Hotel. 2 nights. Jasper's initials were scribbled at the bottom like a signature on a deal. I stared at the paper. It didn't demand to be torn up. Didn't ask to be set on fire. It just confirmed what the diner hadn't finished saying. Downstairs again, I noticed the coffee pot was still warm, but no one had touched it. I turned it off without a word. On the wall by the dining nook, our wedding photo still hung. Back then, Clara wore her hair in soft curls. My hair had more salt than silver. I stared at it for a long while. No tears came. Just this slow, pressing weight in my chest, like my body wasn't sure how to feel and decided silence would do. I wandered into the pantry, half out of habit, and there it was, tucked behind an old jar of molasses and a busted ice cream scoop. The radio, I gave her our first Christmas together. I'd wrapped it in way too much shiny gold paper, and she saved the ribbon for years. It was dusty now, forgotten. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands, then placed it right back on the shelf. Not everything needs to be rescued. In the den, I pulled open the drawer under the couch and took out my old duffel bag. Nothing special, just my basics. A couple pairs of pants, some flannel shirts. That blue sweater she used to say brought out my eyes. Socks, a toothbrush, razor. I packed slow. No rush. Just calm, focused movements. Clarity, I guess. Before I left, I paused in the kitchen, pulled a notepad from the drawer next to the fridge, and wrote in firm, even letters. You chose noise. I choose quiet. I left the note next to the stove, under that silly ceramic salt container shaped like a chicken, the one we found in New Hampshire. For whatever reason, I didn't move it. It still made her laugh once. Outside, the wind had shifted. Snow had started falling again, light and steady, dancing under the glow of the street lamps. Just as I stepped down from the porch, I heard a soft creak from next door. Mr. Hank Bishop was standing out on his porch in a heavy robe, sipping something hot. He didn't say a word, just gave me a slow nod, like he'd seen this coming long before I had. I nodded back. Didn't need to speak. In towns like Wolfboro, the truth doesn't need a megaphone. It finds its way around, quiet but sure. I didn't head for the front drive. Instead, I cut around the side of the house, out through the gate that led to the back alley. My boots left clean, sharp prints in the fresh snow. Every step had weight. The duffel thumped lightly against my side, zipper clicking softly with each stride like wind chimes in the distance. I passed the workshop on my way out. The light inside was still on. My father's old toolbox sat right where I'd left it, under the pegboard that hadn't seen a new tool in over 12 years. I almost opened the door. Almost. But I didn't. I just stood there a second, took it in, then turned and kept walking. Just as I reached the gate, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. You done being dramatic yet? I stared at it for a while. My thumb hovered, but I didn't type anything back. Didn't have to. They always thought I was quiet because I was soft. But I wasn't. I was quiet because I paid attention. The garage still smelled like it always had. Old rubber, winter salt, and gasoline. That scent hadn't changed since Wolfboro decided it needed an auto shop. Snow flurries drifted past the frosted windows, throwing soft halos around the tools on the pegboard. In the back office, things were warmer. Cluttered, yeah, but in a lived-in kind of way. The coffee pot gurgled in the corner like it had nowhere else to be. Jonah Briggs sat across from me, wearing the same flannel I swear he's had since his days on the force. Jonah never asked questions unless he already knew the answers. Today, he just sipped from his chipped mug that read retired, not tired, and waited. I'm not looking for trouble, I told him, steady as a winter creek. Just the truth. Jonah gave a slow nod, set his mug down. That why you're not yelling? I gave a faint smile. You ever known me to yell? He chuckled at that. Fair point. But folks usually only show up with that look on their face when they're about to set something on fire. I'm not, I said. At least, not loudly. Jonah leaned back in his chair, hands resting across his stomach. Tell me how deep this goes. I didn't unload the whole story. Just gave him the outline. The diner. The necklace. The wine glasses. The hotel receipt. Jasper price. And Clara's silence. That had started speaking louder than any fight we ever had. Jonah listened like he was filing everything away in his mind. Then he stood up, walked to the old file cabinet in the corner, and pulled out a folder labeled Public Records, Leases. Set it down like it wasn't anything special. Jasper's been sloppy, he said. Co-signed a lease on a downtown apartment last month. Not listed as his primary residence. Got hotel bookings too. One of them under Clara's old initials, CB. I checked the dates. They line up with that school fundraiser weekend she said she was at. I looked at the pages. Didn't reach for them. You kept all this. I keep a lot of things, Jonah said. Sometimes justice doesn't wear a badge. The door jingled suddenly. Both of us looked up as Nina Collier walked in, brushing snow off her coat. She looked surprised to see me there, then maybe a little relieved. Didn't expect to find you both in the same room, she said softly. I stood. Afternoon, Nina. She nodded, kind eyes flicking from me to Jonah. I don't mean to interrupt. Just needed to drop something off. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope, a little worn around the edges. Clara wrote this, she said. A while back. Never sent it. I found it when she had me help clean out her study drawer last spring. I hesitated. Why give it to me now? Nina looked me square in the eye. Because I think you deserve the full picture. And I think you'll know what to do with it. I took the envelope, held it in my hand, but didn't open it. Thank you. She nodded once more, then left as quietly as she'd come. Jonah opened a drawer, pulled out a small USB stick, and held it up like it weighed more than it should. This is everything I could find. Hotel logs, financials, Jasper's gym business registration. Guess who invested under a maiden name? I didn't flinch. Just took the USB and slid it into my pocket like it was spare change. You gonna blow it all up? Jonah asked low. My voice was calm. No, just gonna light one small candle and let the truth do the rest. We sat a while longer, talking about nothing important. The weather. Snow tires. The high school team's losing streak. Then I left. Snow was still falling in that soft, drifting way. The envelope sat quiet in my coat pocket. The USB pressed against my side like a pebble I meant to carry a while. Back at the house, still technically mine and Clara's, I didn't turn on any lights. Just hung up my coat, set the keys down, and stood by the window, watching snow build up along the banister. That's when I saw it. Something on the porch, wrapped in foil and a cloth napkin. I opened the door and found a warm loaf of cornbread, sitting silent. Underneath it, a note written in neat, careful print. Thought you could use something real tonight. Hank. I didn't smile. But something in my shoulders let go, just a little. I brought the loaf inside, set it on the kitchen counter. Then I walked to the nightstand and set the USB down beside a stack of books I hadn't touched in weeks. I didn't plug it in. I didn't open the envelope. Instead, I went to the pantry, reached behind the molasses, and pulled out the old radio. Wiped off the dust with my sleeve. Switched it on. It crackled at first, like memory static. Then soft jazz filled the room. Low and smooth, notes drifting easy, hanging like familiar ghosts who knew they were welcome. I sat in the old armchair, closed my eyes, and just let the jazz play. In small towns like Wolfboro, secrets don't have to be shouted. They travel in glances, pass between coffee cups and raised eyebrows. Snow had fallen just enough to muffle everything, like the whole town was wrapped in a blanket. Tires made no fuss across the slush, and conversations drifted easy through porch railings and cracked doorways. I walked with my coat buttoned high, hands in my pockets. No real destination. No rush. Didn't need one. The post office sat on the corner of Elm and Harper, squat and square, draped in garland and blinking white lights. Inside, the heater clanked and rattled like it had since before I was born. A few neighbors stood near the counter, chatting more with each other than with the clerk. I nodded as I walked in, made like I was reading the bulletin board, but really I was just listening. "She's already calling him her partner," one woman whispered. "Curious, not cruel. Not even divorced yet." "Oh, honey," the other said. "They've been holding hands since Halloween. I seen it at Granger's." I didn't turn around. Just stared at some fading flyer about the high school's alumni winter gathering. January 19th, Riverbend Hall. There was a time that might have made me smile. Now it just reminded me of what it felt like to be 15 again. Small. Out of place. Unspoken for. I stepped back into the snowy light, and there he was. Jasper. Leaning on his truck like he was posing for a billboard. Sunglasses on, arms folded. Like this was all some show. I didn't stop. Just turned my collar up and kept walking toward cars, books, and things. The bell above the door gave a soft chime as I stepped in. Warmth hit me quick. Cinnamon. Paper. That humming old heater in the corner, still trying its best. The place felt like a library that never learned where it ended. Shelves curved and leaned with age. Behind the counter stood Helen Carr, eyes lighting up when she saw me. "Graham hailed," she said, like it was a story she'd been waiting to finish. "Still drawing trees on napkins?" I smiled just a little. Napkins were the only ones that listened. She laughed, reaching for the kettle. "Still take cider the same way?" "Few things worth changing." She poured it, handed me the mug with both hands. Her fingers were worn, but warm. "I heard," she said softly. "I know," I replied. We sat in the back, surrounded by stacks of books that probably hadn't moved in months. She didn't ask for details. Just looked at me like librarians do, like they're cataloging things you didn't even say out loud. "You know," she said after a while, "Jasper was always a storm in a football jersey, looking for a wall to crash into." I stared at the steam rising from my cup. "And I was the wall." She gave a sad little smile. "But you never cracked. Just took the hit and kept moving." I thought about that. About hallways and lockers and all those times I'd been on the receiving end. Never once fought back. But I remembered everything. "Didn't feel like strength back then," I said. Helen tilted her head. "You weren't weak. Just surrounded by noise too loud to hear your own strength." Outside, the jingle of Jasper's keys broke whatever spell we'd been under. We both looked out the window as he got into his truck and pulled away. Never glanced toward the shop. Helen didn't say anything. Neither did I. But something settled between us in the quiet. After a while, I stood, thanked her, reached for the second cup of cider she'd poured and capped without saying a word. "For Mr. Bishop," she said. I nodded. "He still likes it warm." She smiled. "He still likes most things quiet." I stepped out. Cold air brushed my cheeks like it knew me. I walked the snowy path up to Mr. Bishop's porch. The boards creaked under my boots. The wind made the wreath shake gently against the door. The rocking chair was empty. Porch light off. I stood there for a moment, holding the cider, looking at that space where the old man usually sat with a blanket across his knees and a silent nod for every visitor. Then I placed the cup down by the door and stepped back into the stillness. Some fights get won with fists, others with folders, and the guts to open them without raising your voice. The law office was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes a room feel like it's holding its breath. 2 chairs. 1 table. A window looking out at Main Street, where the wind stirred the last of the dry leaves. Snow hadn't started falling yet, but it would. You could feel it waiting. I sat straight, coat still buttoned, hands resting lightly on the table's edge. Across from me sat Clara. Navy blazer. Lip gloss a little too sharp for morning light. Her hands folded tight. The wedding band was gone. She looked polished, professional. Everything about her controlled, like she'd rehearsed this moment down to the way she crossed her legs. Wesley Ford, the mediator, cleared his throat. We're here today to go over the final terms. I expect courtesy, civility, and above all clarity. Clara gave a crisp nod. Of course. I didn't say anything. Just reached into my bag and laid a manila envelope on the table. It didn't make a sound when it landed, but somehow the whole room felt heavier. Clara's eyes dropped to it, then came back up to mine. What's that? Wesley opened it carefully, pulling out the papers one at a time. Screenshots, bank transfers, hotel receipts, complete with timestamps, lease agreements, Jasper Price's name right there beside hers, in bold, confident ink. Wesley's brow pinched. Some of these accounts are joint. Others are under your maiden name. That may fall under misrepresentation, Mrs. Ellis. Clara's jaw set tight, but her voice stayed smooth. You've been spying on me? I didn't blink. No. Just documenting what was already left behind. She looked away, out the window for a second, then turned back. You've always been dramatic when you're hurt. And you've always mistaken quiet for weakness, I said. You just never listen long enough to know the difference. Wesley tapped his pen on the lease. This isn't a trial, he said, but these documents do complicate claims of financial dependency. Mr. Ellis is within his rights to deny spousal support. Clara folded her arms across her chest. So what? You want to ruin me? I shook my head, voice calm. No. I'm giving you the cleanest exit you'll ever get. Wesley looked between us. Graham, can you state your terms for the record? I didn't look at either of them. No alimony. No shared assets, beyond what she's already taken. She keeps her name. I keep my peace. Her voice cracked just a little. You think you're being noble, but all you're doing is punishing me without raising your voice. I turned to her, steady. You asked me to meet you for dinner. What you did was serve a funeral and call it closure. She looked smaller now, like her heels weren't doing the job anymore. Why are you doing this? My answer came easy. Because I remember who I was before I became who you needed me to be. Wesley set down his pen and leaned back. You're calmer than most, he said. That usually means you've already let go. I stood, buttoned my coat, gave a quiet nod. I have. Clara didn't say another word. She didn't need to. The silence had already picked a side. Outside, the air hit sharp. The kind of cold that let you know snow wasn't far off. I didn't bother fixing my collar. Just let the chill settle. My phone buzzed. It was Jonah. He's been using your name at the gym, Graham. You should see this. I didn't take anything from her. Just stopped giving away pieces of myself. The rental cabin sat out near the edge of Wolfboro, porch facing a grove of tall, quiet trees. Snow clung to the branches like secrets, soft and still. Evening had started to settle in, everything bathed in that deep blue hush right before dark fully takes over. Smoke curled slow from the chimney. Inside, the fire burned steady, casting a golden flicker across pine walls and a kitchen that smelled faintly of ginger and warm bread. I stood by the window, mug in hand, watching flakes drift sideways in the wind. I'd lit the fire an hour ago, just after reading Nina's letter again. One line kept echoing through my chest like a heartbeat. I never dared speak up, but I saw you. I always saw you. The knock came soft, polite, no urgency. I opened the door, and there stood Helen Carr, scarf wrapped tight, cheeks pink from the cold. She had a paper bag in her arms. I brought 2 things, she said. One's edible, one's audible. I stepped aside and let her in. She moved like someone who'd been in that room before, comfortable in quiet places. She set the bag on the table, pulled out a loaf of warm bread, still giving off steam. Then a small bundle, wrapped in cloth. When she unwrapped it, I felt my breath catch. The old radio. Cleaned, polished. The dial glass clear again. She plugged it in, turned the knob slow. There was a pause, then a soft crackle. And then jazz, warm and low, like someone leaning in just a whisper. You're still here. Helen didn't say anything. Just set an envelope beside the bread. From Hank, she said. Left it with the nurse. Told her to get it to you when the snow came. I took it gently, then sat down in the old chair by the fire. The envelope had my name written on it in Hank Bishop's neat hand. Ink a little smudged like maybe the pen gave up once or twice. Inside, just a short note. Graham, don't let the good ones pass twice. Cornbread was just an excuse. Now go listen to something besides your thoughts. Hank. I folded the note slow, pressing the crease flat with my fingers. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. Helen poured cider into 2 mugs. Didn't ask how I took it, just handed it over like she already knew. We sat at the table, the old radio humming low between us, the bread still warm but starting to cool. Neither of us reached for it. She looked up at the shelf above the fireplace, where a thin poetry book sat tucked between a field guide and a dog-eared cookbook. You know, she said, Dickinson was right. Some things that fly are only meant to land once. She opened the book like it was muscle memory, found the page without searching. Her voice, soft but steady, filled the space. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. I closed my eyes, didn't think about the past, didn't picture the house I walked out of or the woman who used to call it home, didn't replay the collapse. I just listened. The fire cracked now and then soft. Outside, snow started falling heavier. Real flakes now, sticking to the railings, collecting in the gravel path. Inside, it smelled like pine and warm bread. That quiet kind of warmth only bookstore owners and old souls know how to make. Her hand rested on the table. Close, not touching. Just there. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I said, I don't need to explain myself. Helen smiled. Not wide. Not bright. Just honest. She closed the poetry book and set it down beside the radio. Some stories don't end, she said. They just rest. The radio hummed on, slow jazz slipping through the room like it belonged there. Outside, snow kept falling. Inside, for once, nothing felt missing. No slammed doors. No raised voices. Just a clean kitchen, soft music, and the kind of quiet that feels like a hand resting on your back without needing to push. I didn't win. I didn't lose. I just stepped out of the noise and took back what had been mine the whole time. My peace. My dignity. And the right to stop proving my worth to people who never asked who I really was. Because betrayal doesn't get the final say. How you carry yourself afterward. That's what people remember. Like a porch light left on in winter dusk, stillness can be a kind of strength. And kindness, the kind that doesn't need to be loud, might be the clearest reply of all. So if this story stirred something in you, maybe don't rush past it. Maybe pass that stillness on. Somebody nearby might be waiting for their own quiet start.